First, I wanted to thank IT for Change and everyone at the roundtable thus far for such a, delightful session yesterday. It really has been a great start to, the discussions, and I really hope that, our panel continues the same lively discussion. First, I would like to send my regrets from my co-author, Ms. Nduta Mbarati, who was invited to present, but due to visa issues was not able to come. And this work is actually based on her field research in her own Kenyan community in Maragua, Kenya, where she grew up. And the paper that we had submitted to the call provides a well-weaved history of women in this nearby village as they feel the effects of various development pathways, so we'll put in that title, undertaken by the Kenyan national government, and kind of how it's now affecting the realities of rural women today, particularly in this case study. And the research paper touches upon many of the aspects that were mentioned yesterday in the lively discussion, particularly around digital inclusion or perhaps limited inclusion. Bahua's description of many societies, including this unique society I'll speak about. Wallace's spoke about the individual versus the collective. This case talks particularly of some of the social groups of rotating savings that continue to be part of the livelihood strategies of women, particularly in this case. Eduardo's point on the nation state and institutional changes of national investments to ICT infrastructure without addressing the continued ramifications of the structural adjustment program, and particularly in agriculture in the past of this country. And then we come to the hype of mobile banking in Kenya, the M-Pesa program, which has received much praise and already starting to produce a lot of academic research of the reach of the unbanked. So given the realities of rural women in agriculture and particularly in Maragua, Kenya, what can we really say about their realities for this new application of, in this case, financial inclusion? So I guess we'll start with the story of rural agriculture in sub-Saharan Africa. It's still a mainstay for lots of labor in the area and perhaps in many of the countries where you're from. Food security is a major issue that's coming up, as well as climate change, the effects of food production, and the very fast-moving effects of food insecurity and the inability to produce one's own food within their country, and the major decline of investment going into agriculture. And that, in Kenya's particular case, 80% of the rural population still depend on agricultural activities as their livelihood. And we talk about, the government programs in the 60s in Kenya. They heavily invested in their programs in agriculture. They said Go Back to the Farms was one of their programs that, there's extensive investment in extension services, rural education and health, that inputs were subsidized, very strong investments by government in the 60s. And then came around the 70s and 80s, a heavy decline. Lots of this idea of the structural adjustment program to come in, which I think has affected many developing countries during that time. Building particular infrastructure that was set up for efficient market, systems, cutting government costs to lower government interference for this enhanced efficiency. But rather what we saw in Kenya was the opposite effect. And that opposite effect had heavy implications on rural women, particularly on non-ownership of land, further lack of information, lower investment, actually the cut of full extension service programs, gendered resources of who would be able to grow the commodity cash crops that were being implemented by government as the replacement to subsistent farming, and continued marginalization. But then life went on. Life goes on. Agriculture continues on. That was the mainstay in the. And so financial and social services for survival continue on. So some of the strategies, I mean, which is probably most apparent in many communities, are income diversification. During farming season, there are the obvious stages of farming, and to always build strategies so that when it's harvest season, that's obviously when time is good, and then when times are still you're seeding and plowing sowing the seeds, you also have strategies to sustain oneself. And then the other strategies through the social groups of informal savings and informal financial mechanisms of rotating savings that are done in social groups. So, with some of these strategies that, Nduta and I discuss, this also went alongside another development pathway, which was the microfinance. And as we know now, I think today, the one kind of summary, the miracle of microfinance, by Banerjee and team, bring up some of the questionable end results of whether there were development economic outcomes of the poor and the critiques of microfinance to date. And to understand that the removal of state welfare interventions and the reliability of just group informal savings mechanisms may provide actually a false, premise of poverty reduction. So now rather, there's this financial tool that has allowed women and men to, have some few survivalist strategies to continue their work under the status quo, an agricultural life of underdevelopment. And then now there's mobile banking. There's, again, become very large in Kenya. The ICT policies have been heavily invested by national government. The push for innovation hubs, the undersea cable that's been of recent investment. And of course, we've seen the drop of prices of mobile technologies in the region, and mobile banking, which has exploded because of their one mobile operator. Safaricom been able to work with government in building a flexible policy that allows for this technology to thrive. And then we come to Portia's talk about mobile banking. Is it additive or transformative? Additive being this additional function to existing banking. So it's like you already had a banking account, and now, we'll just add that SMS so that your transactions, your everyday transactions. Or this transformative, where they say it's, the banking of the unbanked. This real change of bringing financial inclusion, which didn't exist in the past. So what we found in the study that Nduta spent, she's from there, but returning to her home and being able to speak to the women that she grew up with. People are using mobile banking. They're using it for some savings, some small savings for various goods. One said they saved for a toilet, which is quite a large investment, but it was still being used in very limited aspects in the community. And the use was also useful. What they said was useful was for, transactions where, school fees and being able to receive transfers from people in the city. But at the end of the day, it was still the low income that led most of the women to fall back on the informal saving mechanism, the ROSCA, the rotating savings group. And at the end, the fallback meant that they didn't use the M-banking to its full potential that, some may expect because of this large, M-banking hype. And yes, there's the diversification. Now there's the spread of financial risk. Now you have some savings in your mobile phone, as limited as it is because of your low income, and you still have your your rotating savings fund, which is great. But is it really that kind of pathway to start to formalize some of the banking aspects of women in this rural area? I'm still not sure about that. And the returns of M-banking in the agricultural sector are still insufficient. And like I said, the full capacity of women to be able to use M-banking in its what we would hope to be its full form is not happening in this case at this point in time. Okay. So I guess I leave the question is that, so we come back to this, what Eduardo talked about, like the nation state, and, we still haven't been able to address in this case, the structural adjustment program that is left, in this case, if we're talking about agriculture and rural women, in this state is described where underdevelopment is still happening, yet agriculture remains like a large employer of rural people. Then we have, mobile banking, ICTs that are also coming in, but is this like another microfinance? Is it like, oh, M-banking is the solution that can help bank the unbanked, yet we see in this case that it's still having very limited effects of any type of change because we still haven't tried to find that transition between agricultural policy, which is still important because of the food security issue and climate change, and this ICT, sector, mobile sector that's trying to combine, like, are the people being absorbed that are in agriculture into the ICT sector, despite the now changes of national policy and investments. So I leave it at, to turn to, to find that will help me to help us, develop this paper of what is that supportive transition into non-agricultural activities, or where is it that kind of disruption can happen in the agricultural sector, and particularly for the women that we refer to in this case. And so we do thank you, and hopefully you can find some kind of harmonization or some discussion that can start to move forward with this. Thank you.